you, Mr. Speaker. Over the past week, serious safeguarding failures by the children's charity Mermaids have come to light. Revelations that the charity sent breast-flattening devices to young girls behind their parents' back, promoted harmful medical and surgical procedures to children, hired a trustee with links to paedophile organisations, and a digital engagement manager who posted pornographic images online, including of himself dressed as a schoolgirl. For years, despite whistleblowers raising alarm, Mermaids have had unfettered access to vulnerable children. Does my right honourable friend agree that it has taken far too long for these concerns to be taken seriously? And does she also agree that it is high time for a police investigation into the activities of Mermaids and its staff?
It's very important that under 18s are able to develop their own decision-making capabilities and not be forced into any kind of activity. And what I would say on the subject of the investigation she raises, of course those matters should be raised and should be properly looked at.
Let's trust that. Responding to Miriam Cates, MP for Penistone and Stocksbridge, who's asking about the charity Mermaids, which has been in the news for the last few weeks following a Telegraph investigation which claimed that the charity was supporting breast binders to children without parental consent. These are devices used to bind up the breasts in order to give the appearance of a flatter chest. Mermaids offers support around gender and identity to children and young people up to 25 years old and are presently subject to a regulatory compliance case by the Charity Commission. Miriam joins me now. Good morning.
Good morning.
Why put this question down?
Well, as you said, over the last week or so, some very serious revelations about Mermaids have come to light in the mainstream media. But actually, these safeguarding concerns have been flagged by parents and whistleblowers for years now, and those parents have been largely ignored. And so I think we have an opportunity now with the stories that are in the press to really take this further and investigate, hopefully, Mermaids and what's been going on, because it's absolutely devastating what is happening to our children. And yes, I'm a Conservative MP, but I'm also a mum, I'm a former teacher, and I'm in touch with parents up and down the country who tell me the most awful, heartbreaking stories about what's happening to their children. Here's an email, just one that I received last night of many, many that I've received. My daughter has been stolen from me by this ideology. I will never forgive the teachers, social workers, doctors and other adults who unquestioningly accepted her new identity. They undermined me and drove a wedge between me and my daughter. I haven't seen or spoken to her for 10 months. She's 18 next week and I don't even have an address to send her a card. And I have got hundreds of stories from parents who tell how their children have spoken to Mermaids or gone online with Mermaids or had Mermaids visit them in school or other organisations, because there are others, have been told that the answer to their teenage problems is to change sex, that their parents are bigoted, that their parents don't know anything, that they've been led down the path of medical and surgical transition. You know, some have ended up buying hormones on the internet and ended up infertile, or girls with deep voices and stubble for life. You know, this is an enormous safeguarding scandal that we have missed for years. So I'm pleased it's coming to light, but we need to go the full way and investigate it.
We've only had one government in charge in all that time. If you say it's a huge scandal that's been missed, there's no one else, if you're correct, of course, which I'll test a little bit in a moment if I may, but we've only got the Conservatives that's been in charge.
You're absolutely right, Emma. And, you know, as I said, I've not really come on this programme to defend the Conservatives. Obviously, I am a Conservative MP. But I would...
Well, if it's as big as you say, I'm trying to understand what's happened.
Yes, no, absolutely. But I do think, you know, and obviously I can't prove this, but I do wonder, whatever party had been in power, that the reason that this has been missed is because the kind of political scene behind this, and this is why it's happened in many, many Western countries, it's absolutely not just in the UK, has led too few people to question what's going on here, because people are understandably worried about being called transphobic or unkind or lacking in compassion. People have almost closed their eyes to what's been going on, and charities like Mermaids and other groups have been exceptionalised from normal safeguarding procedures. So safeguarding only works when it applies.
We don't know that because I suppose it's responsible to ask. It's responsible to ask at this, if I can, it's responsible to ask you this as a sitting MP at this point. Should we not wait until the outcome of the Charity Commission's regulatory compliance case before making judgment? You seem to have already made your judgment.
Well, of course we should await the outcome of that case, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing it. But, the overwhelming evidence from parents across the country, and you don't have to go far on social media, in the media, to find all sorts of reports of parents who've been forbidden access to what their children are being taught at schools, where these groups have come in without parents' knowledge. Now, that is a massive safeguarding red flag. The first rule of safeguarding is that anyone who seeks to separate children from their parents, whether that's emotionally or physically, we need to ask questions, because parents are the ones who are the most biologically, emotionally invested in children and are there to keep them safe. So there's clearly issues around separating children from parents, isolating children from parents. That in itself is a safeguarding red flag.
There's a statement here from Mermaids, which I just wanted to share with you, which is a bit about you at the beginning and then moves to the broader issue. It says, Mrs. Cates' attitude, talking about you, towards LGBT organisations are well documented. This is not the first time she has criticised Mermaids. We will continue to provide crucial support for trans and gender diverse young people and their families, and remain accountable to our service users and the public at large through the Charity Commission and other regulators. What would you say to that?
Gay, same-sex attracted children are some of the most at risk from this ideology. So a lot of children who experience gender distress, who assume a trans identity, are same-sex attracted. And the evidence suggests that most children, without being pushed down a path of transition, would turn into well-adjusted, happy gay adults. And I speak to lesbians all the time who are terrified by what's going on, because they say to me, if I'd had this option as a teenager that I could cut off my breasts and take hormones, I would have taken it. And actually, some of this ideology is very homophobic, because it says to same-sex attracted children, not you're gay, but actually you should be a boy, or actually you should be a girl. And that's deeply worrying. It's it's very dangerous for children who are same-sex attracted to be taken down that route, rather than supported as they're exploring their sexuality. And this is why the LGB Alliance have formed, because they are so afraid of what this gender identity ideology means for gay teenagers.
And just to be clear, your way into this, because there's a hint at the beginning of that statement, you tell me, around your attitudes towards LGBT organisations being well documented. Your way into this is what? As an MP hearing from constituents, or do you have another connection to this?
So before I became an MP, I was aware of, families that I'm connected to, of children who had been subject to some of these groups and who had, difficulties as a result of it. I assumed that this was kind of, very niche, not happening in many schools. And then when I became an MP and I started to get involved in some education and schools issue, because that's my passion, I suppose, people started writing to me about what was going on in their schools all over the country. And it was about a year ago, that I first decided to raise this as a safeguarding issue in the House of Commons. And I did get some, flack, both in the House of Commons and on social media. But I also was absolutely overwhelmed with the number of people who wrote to me and said, oh my gosh, I can't believe someone's finally voiced what we've been going through. All over the country, all different types of schools, all worried about their children. And ever since then, it's just kept coming and coming and coming. So I am approaching this from a safeguarding point of view. I think there are children at risk. I think this is a safeguarding issue, not a culture war issue. And yes, of course, there's going to be backlash to anyone who raises those issues. But, children are at risk here, and I care passionately about their future, and that's why I'm raising it.
It's good to hear the background of your connection, because if people don't know your work as a politician, they may also want to know your link to this. Naomi has raised an issue of safeguarding of a different matter. I just wanted to put this to you while I had you, an email that's come in. Please ask Emma to question the MP who's critical of Mermaids about the abuse received by the charity that has forced it to close its helpline because it's no longer safe for the volunteers who answer the calls. I think that's important in the name of balance and impartiality. What do you say to that there's no longer a helpline?
Well, I don't condone abuse, of course, in any circumstances, and nobody should be ringing Mermaids or anyone else to abuse staff. That's completely inappropriate. But it cannot detract from what has been shown to be going on here and the investigations that are taking place. And let's remember what has been revealed over the past week. Mermaids sending breast flattening devices to children behind their parents' backs. Now, if you go on the Met Police website,
that's what's being claimed.
It lists breast flattening as a form of child abuse. These are really serious allegations. Of course, no one should be
You're oscillating between saying what's being said has been found and what's been alleged. I think it's important to make that distinguish that. That's what's being alleged at this point, and that's what's being looked
up for those who are investigating it. But these are serious allegations, and of course, no one should be abusing mermaids or any other group. But we cannot be distracted from investigating what are very serious safeguarding allegations.
It's the first stage of the investigation in terms of it's what's being looked at the moment. I use that phrase. It's not a finding of wrongdoing. It's a first step taken by the regulator, a regulatory compliance case. They've opened it. They're engaging with trustees, the Charity Commission, and they're looking at it at the moment. We will see what happens with that. I'm sure we will talk again. And just about the helpline, it closed for one day yesterday, explaining that it had to give the charity saying it had to give their staff respite from the high volume of distressing and in some cases threatening calls and emails and web chat contacts as a result of some of the recent coverage. We will talk again, as I say, about this. Miriam Cates, MP, thank you very much for your time this morning and what you've been hearing from parents and from teachers.